On November 18, 1994, Belinda Hinton was concerned about her brother Jay, as he failed to contact her on her birthday. Her fiance William went to check on him, but he had to break a back window to get into the house. Almost immediately, he was met with a foul odor, and with his room in disarray, William knew something was wrong. He then found the decomposing body of his brother-in-law. Jay's face was crushed with a concrete stone sitting near his body, but the marks on his neck indicated that he was strangled to death. He had 5 broken ribs and multiple abrasions on his arms and legs, while also having a rag and toilet paper stuffed in his mouth. A receipt with the name of Tim Whitfield was found at the scene, and a possible lead was formed, but it wouldn't take long for the police to find their man, whose real name was Gary Ray Bowles, and as the authorities looked more into him, they learned that Jay wasn't the only victim. Welcome to History's Biggest Villains. Gary was born January 25, 1962 in Clifton Forge, Virginia, but his father, who worked as a coal miner, died from black lung disease before he was born. His mother, Frances, remarried several times, as her next husband, Gary, would be a frequent abuser, beating her, Gary, and his brother repeatedly. She divorced him and married a man named Chet, but he wasn't any better. He was an alcoholic, and he would get drunk out of his mind and beat the boys and Frances almost daily, and she was even sent to the hospital on several occasions. At the age of 10, Gary began to sniff glue and paint along with other drugs in a way to escape his reality. He then dropped out of school in the 8th grade. After the boys continued to get abused by Chet, their anger towards him increased until it reached a boiling point. The boys ganged up on their stepfather and severely beat him, as one of the boys hit him in the head with a rock. However, their mother continued to remain in the marriage, and Gary was so frustrated that he left home to live on the streets. He earned money prostituting himself to other men, but he remained homeless through most of his teens. Gary wasn't considered to be gay, but he likely engaged in activities with men strictly for financial gain. He would only allow them to perform oral sex, but nothing further. He had several heterosexual relationships as well, as he even lived with a few of his girlfriends, but his violent nature would rear his ugly head. In June 1982, he was living in Hillsborough County, Florida with his girlfriend Wesley. That night, he suddenly attacked her, viciously beating and raping her. Wesley was found with choke marks on her neck. Her face was severely battered, with both of her eyes swollen shut. One of her breasts were bitten, and the doctors told her that she had internal lacerations to her vagina and rectum. Investigators noticed a large amount of blood in the bedroom and the bathroom, as the splatters reached 5 feet above the bed. Gary was sentenced to 6 years. After his release, he was arrested for pushing down an elderly woman and stealing her purse. He was sentenced to 4 years, but he only served 2. After he got out of jail this time, he would escalate his crimes to a deadly level. On April 14, 1994 in Daytona, Florida, police found the body of 59-year-old John Hardy Roberts in the living room of his apartment. His neck had signs of strangulation, and he had a rag stuffed in his mouth. He had severe head trauma, and one of his fingers was nearly severed. It was clear that a violent struggle had taken place due to the state of the room. Blood was everywhere, and the coffee table and glass lamp lay broken on the floor. The victim's car and credit cards were stolen. However, the killer was careless as he left several fingerprints and his probation papers at the scene. Phone records indicated that a man named Gary Ray Bowles had made several calls from John's residence, and bank records showed that Gary had tried to use his credit card. A manhunt was now in place as the trail led investigators to Silver Spring, Maryland. A maintenance man discovered the decomposing body of 38-year-old David Jarman in the basement of his home. Similar to Roberts, he was beaten and strangled to death with a rag stuffed in his mouth, as his credit cards and car were stolen. Witnesses had seen David leave a gay bar the night before with a man that matched Gary's description. The police also discovered that his credit cards were being used, and the signature on the receipt matched Gary's. They were pretty sure he was the killer, but he was nowhere to be found. Several weeks later, investigators in Savannah, Georgia would witness a grisly scene. On May 5th, the body of 72-year-old Milton Bradley was found behind a shed at a golf club. It was the same modus operandi as the other 2 victims. This murder was extremely shocking to the community, as Milton was known as a quiet and gentle man, but a severe head injury suffered during his military days led to him receiving a lobotomy. This caused slight mental impairment, as this possibly made him a more vulnerable victim. A fingerprint found at the scene, as well as an eyewitness account, led police to believe that Gary was responsible. Now that they had a serial killer on their hands, the police contacted America's Most Wanted and filmed segments about Gary's suspected crimes, but the authorities weren't any closer to finding him. On May 19th, 37-year-old Albert Morris was found dead in his trailer in Nassau County, Florida. He was beaten in the head with a blunt object, shot in the chest, and strangled. He had a towel stuffed in his mouth and tied over his head. His card and credit cards were missing from the scene. Eyewitnesses last saw him arguing in a bar with a man that matched Gary's description. Later that month, the FBI believed that the murder of 47-year-old Alberson Carter Jr. in Atlanta bore similarities to the other murders. In November, Gary was living in Jacksonville Beach with Jay Hinton after he helped them move into his trailer. On the 18th, they were partying with a guy named Rick as they drank several beers and smoked several joints. Afterwards, Jay drove Rick to the train station and he and Gary returned back to the trailer. Gary continued to drink more beers while Jay fell asleep. Gary later testified that something snapped in him as he went outside and grabbed a 40-pound stone from in front of the house. He brought it inside and placed it on the table. He stopped to think a little, but he grabbed the stone again and dropped it on Jay's head. Jay awoke and a struggle ensued as he had a rag and toilet paper stuffed in his mouth before being strangled to death. A receipt with the name of Tim Whitfield was found at the scene, but the characteristics of this murder were exactly the same, as Jay's car and watch were stolen. Gary was later found and arrested at a motel, and he quickly confessed to the 6 murders. Following his arrest, Gary told police that following his 1991 release from prison, he moved to Daytona Beach and moved in with a girlfriend and resumed working as a prostitute. According to him, she became pregnant, then had an abortion after she found out that he was a sex worker. Bowles told the police that he blamed gay men for the abortion, and this led him to becoming a murderer. What? In 1996, Gary pleaded guilty to the killing of Jay Hinton in Jacksonville on November 17, 1994. He received the death penalty for Hinton's murder. In August 1997, while sitting on death row for the murder of Hinton, Gary pleaded guilty to the murder of John Hardy Roberts in 1994. He was found guilty of 3 more counts of murder and sentenced to death. But the sentence would be reversed by the Florida Supreme Court when they determined that the court messed up by allowing the jury to hear that Gary hated homosexuals and that the victim was gay. He was given a new sentencing hearing and he received the death penalty again in 1999. Gary was executed by lethal injection on August 22, 2019 at Florida State Prison in Rayford. To be honest, I feel like this dude was closeted. He was a closeted gay dude. He just felt like he needed to take some type of revenge out on gay men for some reason. I don't understand it. It's really just interesting how these people do the exact same thing. Like, that's really how you catch them. Like, they do the exact same routine. All the victims had something stuffed in their mouth. All the victims were strangled. All the victims had their car and their credit card stolen. I mean, he was a drifter. No effort to clean up any scenes. Just carelessness. RIP to the victims. And Gary is executed just like he should have been. I appreciate you guys who watched the video. Leave a like if you enjoyed it. That subscribe button if you're new to my channel. Turn my post notifications on if you haven't already. Thank you. Please be safe. Stay on the grind. I'm out. Peace.